Yeah, you're talking out. Got a whole lot of words falling out. Yeah, run your mouth. Take your whole deeper go, baby, go and show yourself. Play your game, I'll be patiently wait until time runs out.
Okay, so on this week's Interlude, I have a special guest with me, Kim Daly, who has ran the gamut of print and online media. She's also worked as a rape crisis counselor. She's an accomplished writer with more than 10 years of experience and holds a master's degree in trauma studies. Today, she's here to talk about her latest book, The True Crime File: Serial Killers, Famous Kidnappings, Great Cons, Survivors, Their Stories, Forensics, and more. I mean, and with everything you do, how did you have time to even write a book?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I actually just got out of a meeting with my boss where I asked for like a whole lot of time off. It's like vacation time might be the answer to that. Just like using all my vacation time to obsess over true crime, which is like, what else am I really going to do with it anyway?
I mean, we all got hobbies.
Yeah. It definitely, it starts as a hobby and then it kind of takes over a little bit, right? I have some experience with that.
You just start dreaming about it and you're just thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like all day, all night. So I've had to get some new, less terrifying hobbies, which is also, that's good. Like,
so, what are some of the less macabre hobbies?
Like yoga.
You gotta center yourself after all the murder.
I would say, it's funny that you say macabre because I was going to say I take a lot of long walks through the cemetery across the street, but that doesn't really count.
I mean, it seems blissful, honestly, because nowhere's quieter.
Yeah, it's peaceful. It's beautiful. Not everybody there was murdered, so that's also good. Not everybody there is a victim of a violent crime, which is always a good thing.
You got to find the positives.
Yes, exactly.
So now, can you tell us like a little bit about this book?
So yeah, this is the True Crime File. It's sort of like it's meant to be like a mini encyclopedia or like a survey of true crime. So it has a little bit of everything in it. So I've been writing a true crime page-a-day calendar for Workman for about 4 years now. And then a few years back, we were lucky enough to have a new editor, John Miles. He is the editor for this book. And he actually previously worked at Workman and then came back 20 years later, which is like a very Workman thing. He, in the time between, he became this pro true crime editor. So he comes back and he's like, this has potential for a book. Like the popularity of the calendar has potential for a book. And so it became sort of like a collaborative effort, also very Workman, between me and him. So yeah, that's like sort of how it grew. They call these books chunkies, which I think is hilarious. So it's like a little book packed to the brim with information.
That's so funny because that was my name in middle school.
Yeah.
So what inspired this book? So it seemed it came from the calendar, right?
Yeah, so it came from the calendar, and it's sort of based on the popularity of that and just an interest in everything true crime, because it really is. I aimed for it to be everything true crime, like as much information as possible. So the stories are very short, obviously, just to pack a lot in there. It's meant to be a starting point also for, sort of like to fall down like a Google, like a Wikipedia hole or like that, just like an entry point into true crime.
Yeah, because reading over it felt like the true crime Bible.
Yeah, so it's paced in a way, like at first, John and I had talked about doing it in segments of like all the serial killers up front and then all the survivors in it. And he was like, no one's going to read past the serial killers if we do that. So he wanted to sort of like mix it up. And hopefully that does make it more readable also in one sitting. But, you can also pick and choose.
It was really engaging, too, the way it's formatted, because like it keeps you really just hooked on what's coming next.
Right, yeah, and then it has those lighter crimes, so it's like just when you thought you had too much of like all the darkness, it's like, oh, someone held up a bank with a cucumber. All right, well, maybe this stuff isn't too heavy after all. I'll read on, and then you're back in Dahmer land. So yeah, a lot of curveballs in there.
So how many books have you written? And out of all the ones you've written, which one is your favorite?
So this is the only book that I've ever written, and it's a very favorite. So I really like it. Actually, the copies came on my birthday, and it was perfect. It was a perfect birthday present. But I've been also writing the page day calendar. I've written 4.5 so far. I'm just really proud of the whole little project overall.
So what part of the book was the most challenging for you to write?
I think just the sheer amount of content. I think it's more than 200 stories in there. And there are some lighter ones, but it's a lot of killers and a lot of driver tales, which are wonderful, but they don't start off so good. And just like the idea that I could keep writing like this for the next 40 years and never run out of content is kind of depressing.
You gotta pass it up.
Yeah, but it can really wear on you to think like, wow, like another one, and of all the things I think I know quite a lot of true crime stories, but there are so many that I don't know. And I do have friends who are like, how could you possibly never heard of this? And I'm like, well, there's just so much awfulness in the world. I don't know what to do.
Well, unfortunately, people just keep getting murdered. So
people just keep getting murdered. There are so many cases that were never publicized, and now crimes are getting solved because of genetic genealogy. Like more crimes are getting solved, more unidentified victims are being identified. And this is all great stuff, but it's also just like, take a breath.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge is just like every now and then, like getting over that hurdle of like, oh my God, like another story. Okay.
And especially as like a woman, because most of these cases involve like women being victims. So I can only imagine how like you get put in that mindset of kind of being on guard or putting a wall up.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely can't do the woods ever again, like the middle of nowhere. I feel pretty safe in the city, but
men will ruin everything. They'll ruin the woods for you.
They ruined the wood. They absolutely ruined the woods for me. I went to visit a friend outside of Durham a couple of weeks ago, and she lives like in the middle of the woods. I was like, first of all, a cool city that you can just drive 20 minutes and be in the middle of the woods. But also, I'm terrified, and I'm supposed to stay in this guest house by myself. And then I was watching Criminal Minds, and I was like, what am I doing with my life here?
I need to go to bed. So what was the funnest part of the book for you to write?
I really liked sort of updating all the, like going back through all the stories. So I guess I liked the drafting. I liked going through and updating everything. I'm really involved at work with conscious language, so I enjoyed updating the language. That was really fun. It's these little changes do make a big difference in how we talk about incarceration and also victimology, all kinds of things. So I really liked that, and just I really enjoyed the publishing process. I've been working in publishing for 10 years, and I really enjoy bookmaking. My job is in a part of the process where I get to see a little bit. I don't get to do everything because I don't know how to design books or anything, but I get to sort of work with designers, and but I've never before gotten to work on the side of an author, and especially at the company that I work at, these are my colleagues, and I really admire and respect them. So it was just so cool to see them, and they're just so good, and it's a marvel. It's all kinds of things that I couldn't do, either marketing and publicity. I kind of don't even know the difference between those two still.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, and just I have one of each, of my colleagues doing it, and it's just they're just so good. Every time they email me, I'm like, are you kidding? We're doing what? That's amazing. So that has been, but yeah, I guess just the bookmaking process has been really amazing, and pairing that with true crime for me is just dreamy, I guess.
Just the bee's knees.
Yeah, really.
So how much research did you have to do for the book?
So much. So it's amazing how much research you have to do to distill something like Charles Manson down to 1,500 words.
I tip my hat.
I feel and I don't know if this is true, but I feel I need to know everything that happened, everything about the crimes, even if I'm not going to include all the details. And I do pick and choose details like, oh no, I'll leave this for them to like look up. Like they're gonna like, the idea is you're gonna look up this crime because you're so interested in it after reading this, 1,500 word like summary of it, and you're gonna learn about like all the really horrible things that I didn't include. So it feels sometimes like hours of research into like every 200 words. Like, so.
I mean, but that's you can see that in the book too when you're reading it, how you really put your time into making it in a way where you're getting all the information that you need to know, and you're still like intrigued. Like, well, let me go Google this real quick because
yeah, I'm glad that shows, because I feel like it's the one thing like you can't really show so much like what you didn't do. Like, yeah. So I'm glad it's coming off as sort of like knowledgeable. Because there are some things that I would really like to include, but it really like one detail of a crime, you can write a whole book on it.
Oh yeah.
So fitting 200 stories into one book, you really have to pick and choose.
You have to have a lot of paper for that.
A lot. Yeah, you have to have a lot of paper. It's true.
So now you covered a lot of serial killers. What was the most complex killer to write about and kind of like whittled down in a good, concise way?
I'm going to say Terry Hoffman. She was a cult leader. She started in the 60s selling crystals. So, be on the lookout, because
some real ball stuff.
So she started a cult called Conscious Development of Body, Mind, and Soul. And she starts with crystals, develops this cult, and then eventually her husbands start dying, her followers start dying. They're killing themselves. They're killing other people. And all of their wills name Terry Hoffman as the sole beneficiary. So what a coincidence. The reason that I found this so complex is because it's sort of, the story is stranger than fiction, sort of, and it's actually really hard to convert stranger than fiction into nonfiction writing, because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Like there's one part that one detail that I really love is that I don't know if love is the right word, but it's so weird, right, with true crime when you're like, I love that she did this. She's awful. But she convinced two of her followers that they had invisible CIA lovers. And one of the CIA lovers was threatening the other friend. So this is like a Lifetime movie, and oh my god, yeah, it would be a perfect Lifetime movie, but making it into like a short nonfiction story
a little hard.
So I feel like at least 3 editors query this along the process and be like, what is an invisible CIA lover? And I was like, I don't know what to tell you.
Google it.
When I say it though out loud, it does sound like it's like something that's invisible that loves the CIA. But I felt like
a jaded employee who didn't get employed a month.
But I feel like in context, it's like, she convinced these women that they had invisible lovers who worked for the CIA. And there are it's just like a lot of details like that. It's just like really hard to be clear when you're writing. There are other stories like that, but I feel like Terry Hoffman especially so. And then the story is just like really unsatisfying at the end of the day. Like I think she was jailed for a year for bankruptcy fraud, and she died a free woman, and that's it. So like all of these people died very mysteriously around her. I mean, like one woman killed her daughter for like at the advice of Terry Hoffman, and she profited off of all of this, and then they couldn't catch her for anything. So it's like complicated, weird, and unsatisfying. So it was really.
It sounds like an MLM gone wrong.
Yeah.
So now you talk about survivors a lot throughout the book. So if you could meet any survivor that you covered, who would it be and what would you say to them?
And now, a message from our sponsors.
So I think it would be Erica Pratt, the 7-year-old who escaped her own kidnapping, like in a really heroic way. So she was like blindfolded, I think, and tied to a chair, and she like kicked through a window and, escaped, and she only had like minor injuries to her eye. And that was in 2002. She was 7, so she'd be 27 now. And I just like want to see like what she's like,
Like, I hope she's a badass.
Not be. Like, how could she not be?
Like some nighttime superhero or something.
Yeah, she's like, no big deal, whatever. Like,
I'll do it again. So now in the section Bizarre Brutality, how did you decide what was brutal enough to make the book, and what cases like didn't make the list? Because if these are the ones that got in there,
right? So that's a really interesting question, because it's sort of a catch-all. Like, it was, so that the category was meant to be a catch-all for anything like in the book that, well, first of all, it has to be obviously like really, there has to be like some sort of strange element to it, like and then it has to be a violent crime that wouldn't necessarily fit in murder, or what's the other one, I think, or survivor or anything like that. Of course, like a lot of these things got moved around after, like from the first draft. So, there are more murders that ended up in there, but there were some that I had to nix for page count. And that includes the Hello Kitty murder, which is like a murder that happened in Hong Kong in 1999. And they found a woman's severed head inside of a life-size Hello Kitty mermaid doll. So really weird. Also weird. Hong Kong, one of the lowest homicide rates in the world, and then this happens. So that was one. Another was the copycat Zodiac, which was
Ted Cruz. Yeah.
Yeah. He exactly. Yes, exactly. It was Ted Cruz, and that's the end of that story.
A little bow on that. There we go. Solved it.
That's it. All right. Well, we'll stop there. There was the Duval twins crash in Maui. I don't know if you remember this one. It's happened in 2015, and it was these two women, twins, who had this really volatile relationship, and they got into a fight on a highway. I forgot what the highway is called. My partner's from Maui. I don't know, but it goes around the island. It's like, on a mountain. It goes around a mountain, and they got into a fight while driving a convertible on this like mountainside highway, and they fell over, and one of the twins died, and the other one was charged with I want to say like at least manslaughter, right?
That's a rough one.
Yeah, but there's also like stories going back of these two women just like having these like, knockdown, drag out fights like in front of other people, and then they would make up the next minute, and twins.
So,
regular twin stuff, I guess. Yeah, and then other stuff like people killing other people with rattlesnakes, just like weird. Oh, choleraphobia, that was one that didn't make it. That's fear of clowns.
And fair, very fair.
With fear of clowns, and then I don't know if you remember this, but around 2016 there were all of these like killer clowns. Yeah.
Yes.
So I talked a little about that.
I remember the first time I seen it was a clip on World Star, and I was like, "What timeline are we in?"
What was that? And then I like, knock on wood, it just stopped. Like, what happened to those clowns?
I just blame 4chan. I don't know.
Yeah, so those are some, but there are a lot that are just like so terrible. Like, yeah.
So now there's also a section about con artists. So now out of all the con cases you read, which one would be like best adapted into a movie, like a blockbuster? Because I love the Heist.
No, everyone loves a con artist until they start killing people.
Yeah.
There's like a clearly delineated line with con artists. Like, very clever, wonderful. You kill someone, you're a murderer. We don't like you anymore. So
yeah, if Sandra Bullock started like just shooting people in Ocean's 11, the ratings would have.
It's not. It's not rooting for her anymore. But funnily enough, I was on a podcast called "Why Is This Not a Movie?" With Mike Vago, and I chose to talk about Mark Olmstead, who was he was a con man he ran cons in the 90s and the early aughts. credit card fraud and like disability fraud, with the understanding that he was HIV positive and he thought he was going to die of AIDS, and everyone around him was dying. And so, yeah, he just like ran these they were clever, but they were also like, how did you not get caught? Like at the same time, it was, he was using like fake stamps from like Little League clubs. Like,
oh,
yeah. And, he was like copy pasting, Xeroxing, like old school Photoshop, because his brother had died of AIDS, and he was falsifying the death certificate to sort of like clear credit card debt. And, but, he was defrauding the same government that was complicit in the AIDS crisis. And, like, who cares about credit card companies? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Burn them all to the ground.
So you can't help but sympathize with this guy. And he's very, very smart. He speaks 6 languages or something. And he's just like going through this apocalyptic experience. And then, of course, there's the twist, which, I won't give away. It's in the book. So
that was great.
It was a great twist.
So now, if you were a con artist or a thief, what would your amazing heist be? And what would you call it? There's always a great name with a caper.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not great at names. So another thing something that's changed a lot. The first draft of this book is that my editor helped me snazz up the titles of the stories, because mine tend to be like pretty dry. But okay, let's see, like something like Reverse 101 Dalmatians. Where I'm like stealing puppies from, like, I don't know, whatever, like coat makers.
a bunch of Cruellas, yeah.
I'm stealing them back. So I guess it would just be like 101 Dalmatians with human intervention, and maybe the dogs would just be better off on their own. I don't know, but
we're not turning you into coats. We're all gonna go hang out.
It would, yeah. It would be something like that, I think.
No, I love that. So now, why did you feel it was essential to add in the sections about like forensic facts and legal concepts? Because, I mean, as a true crime podcaster myself, I thought that was helpful for me just to get a little bit more knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all part of crime, and it all works like well together and against crime stories. I think that it's been my experience that a lot of people get really mired in sort of like true crime is murder. It's stories about murder and like gory details of murder. And I'm like, no, it's like really the whole crime. And so much goes into like solving a crime, or quote unquote solving a crime, just like, which in a lot of cases is just trying to close the case.
Yeah.
And we're learning new things about how like older forensic methods like blood spatter and hair analysis, like all that is sort of like debunked now, and how many people are in prison based on that. A lot. And then, yeah, the way the legal system works for and against justice. Like, I read something today about changing the language of the criminal justice system to call it the criminal legal system, because it's not really like justice.
Yeah.
It's really just working around justice. I feel like we say that that's the goal, but when you look at it, that's not really what's happening. So it is, I think it is. It's necessary background to really understand what's going on with a lot of these crimes. And even things like the survival story of Mary Vincent, like her attacker got something like 7 years in prison, and then he was released, and he killed someone right away when he was released. And so it's like, what happened? Like,
yeah.
There's the laws around that where he only got, he violently attacked and raped and dismembered this 15-year-old girl who survived. And they were like, all right, well, 7 years, that sounds good. So it's like, how did that happen?
They make it make sense at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that happens. And then other people are, they get life in prison for,
Some marijuana or something.
Yeah, 3 strikes. Like it's just like, it's kind of a crime into itself sometimes. So I think
it's also that part of the true crime community where you get like past the murder and you're like, so America's kind of ghetto. Wait, like the legal system is kind of trash.
Yeah, it really is. It's really. I'm in this phase right now where I'm like, everything is true crime.
It all circles back to murder. I
mean, with everything happening, like with Roe v. Wade, I'm like, look at all the true crime possibilities that are coming out of this, and it's a legal, quote unquote legal concept. So, and people could die, and under very
people definitely could die, and I don't.
so,
That disconnect with other people in America is just so. It's like people are still gonna get abortions, but now they're not gonna be as safe.
Right. Yeah. So we're like paving the way for those bad kinds of con artists who want to sell illegitimate things and hurt people. So there you go. It's all connected.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was watching this documentary recently about a woman who was selling like herbal tea to give women natural abortions, and it was just making women sick, obviously. But she just made so much money off that.
Yeah, that's a bummer. That's not the way to do it.
So now, there's a lot of quick facts you have sprinkled throughout the book too. So what's a quick fact you think that everyone should just know, like just have locked in the back of their head?
I think everyone should know that crime has gone down despite public perception that it has gone up, which is a weird thing to say because in this very moment, I'm in Brooklyn, like crime has actually gone up, but historically it's still down from like previous decades.
And do you have any theories of why I think that might be?
Well, I put that as the last. That's the period at the end of this book, which is like sort of tongue in cheek because it's a book about 200 crime stories.
Yes.
Why would anyone think that crime has gone up? But I do think it's because just like the changing media landscape. I mean, we can consume true crime all the time. We're not just looking at the 10 o'clock news or the newspaper or 2020. We can curate our media landscape to be all about true crime. So I think that's why. I think ultimately it's not a bad thing. I mean, I think there's more fear, but we're also talking about things that there's no other way to solve these things besides talking about them. I think it's the media that is making people think that it's gone up. But apparently, we're a less violent culture now. You wouldn't know it.
You wouldn't know about watching TV.
No.
So now, how would you describe your book's ideal reader? Who is this for?
My dream for this book is that every true crime fan has a copy in their bathroom. And that every true crime fan gifts it to their friends who are sort of on the fence about true crime, and then those people also keep it in their bathroom. So I think it's a perfect bathroom book for true crime fans, also for guests, because it's not too gratuitous, it's not too gory. It's sort of like I think it's interesting enough that people are like, oh, I get why you'd be interested in these things. And then, there's a story for any length of time you need to be in the bathroom. So
that should be the new tagline, like a book in every bathroom.
I need to clear that with my publishers and see how they really feel about me saying that. But that's what I think.
I think it's catchy as hell. So now, where can people find your book and find you?
Well, I think it's available. What's the line? Available wherever books are sold. So try to support the indies, obviously, but you can find it at workman.com, and you can follow Workman at Workman Pub on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I'm not much for social media, but if you want to see pictures of my cat and dog and the flora and fauna of Greenwood Cemetery, you can follow me on Instagram at We Look Awesome. And I'm on Twitter at Daily Minutia. It's impossible to spell. I can't even spell it. I do post occasionally about conscious language and true crime there.
Oh, sweet. Before you go, I did have my own little mini quiz that I wanted you to test out. Yeah. So I'm calling this, which serial killer is the stand for this pop girl? This is what I made up arbitrarily. I'm going to give you the pop girls. I'm going to give you the serial killers, and you just match them up.
Okay.
All right. So now the pop girls: Gaga, Ariana Grande,
okay,
Rihanna.
Great.
Serial killers: Dahmer, Gacy, Bundy.
Okay. This is like a serious question for me. So. Okay. I'm gonna pair Bundy with Ariana Grande, Dahmer with Gaga, and Gacy with Rihanna. No. I'm like, I feel like Gacy should go with Ariana Grande, actually. So I don't know. That's a tough one.
That was a little interchangeable, but you got my initial one right. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's what you were thinking?
Exactly what I was thinking.
All right. I like that.
Yeah, but I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking to me about the book. I'm a fan of it. I highly recommend it. I'm definitely going to put one in my bathroom.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I just thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, anytime.
Do you hear yourself? All these strange explanations, why don't you give it up? What's your name? Is it love? Just a phase? No, I'll keep it up. You were at your mother's, your brother's, whatever. I've had enough, but I guess I'll let you finish up. All the stories that you tell, what a beautiful imagination. And you should tell them where you've been, who you're with, yeah, okay then.
We now have breaking news.
I'm
Did you know 77% of women who wear bladder weakness products experience intimate skin irritation?
As if having incontinence wasn't stressful enough.
But Tena Intimate Pads have been gynecologist tested and do not cause skin irritation.
Gentle on my intimate skin. I need to try Tena Intimate Pads.
Visit TenaSample.com for your free sample. Kind to skin, protects like Tena.